All right, welcome everyone to Albuquerque, New Mexico, Good Medicine Way. Got a good show tonight. Sarah Augustine is going to be our speaker tonight, and we'll introduce her later on here. We have different ones kind of filtered in here on our order of worship. They're going to be sharing with you. I had a couple things. I've been pondering something, and somebody was telling me one time, Casey, you work out of the box. And I was telling the friend here, Damien, he's with us tonight. You have to scroll over to see him, but he's here, Damien Costello. He's part of our NATES faculty group. He's here and he's out here visiting family. But somebody said, well, you work out of the box. I says, I work as if there is no box. That's the way you got to do it. And little joke that I was trying to explain to you, visualize this, a Christmas tree. And then the package that's there, and Jesus is holding this package. And the package is a church with a steeple, a little white church. And God says to him, I thought you wanted a church. And Jesus says, I do want a church, but I can't get it out of the box. Yeah, so just kind of like, ooh, right there. So that's where we're coming from here. So Good Medicine Way is trying to do things out of the box, decolonizing the way that we do ministry. So I want to turn it over now to AC, where our welcome, our land acknowledgement. Take it away.
That was a good one. I like that. Good evening, everyone. Hope you all are doing well. I'm coming to you from Yemisi and Escamacu homelands. Unfortunately, those people don't live here anymore. They just relocated, and but I live here on their lands, and I try to take care of their land as much as I can, their ancestral homeland. And as you can see, my little one wants to see what's going on too. His name is Mahotne. Yeah, I just want to welcome everybody and look forward to a good evening tonight. Should be a good one. I'm just gonna say a little greeting here. This is a little 4 directions prayer of sorts in Cheyenne. Partly Cheyenne, partly English. A little bit different, but I think you all will like it. It says, Ha Neham Mahia, grandfather sacred above and grandmother sacred below, creator, all spirit Mahio. Thank you for this sacred evening, for this gathering. Maheo, haho, nahif, niaish, maheo. Thank you. As the humble, upright, 2-legged walkers with 5 fingers. Thank you for the divine, the holy that is within each of us, your 4 human children from each of the 4 sacred directions of this good earth. Thank you for the sacred breath of life. Thank you for the power of good-heartedness and spirit-centeredness. Thank you for good minds and speech. Thank you for your great gift of sight and vision so that we can see the beauty of life and the beloved in each other. Maheo, creator, with humility, I ask you to encircle each of us with all that is good, especially with respect, compassion, understanding, and joy. Shield all who stand here before you with the power that is love and the strength of gentleness and their sacred commitment to educating the beloved and precious children of this sacred red earth. Fulfill their vision of recreating a strong and compassionate human community that understands the kinship of life. Bless all of our relatives who have come to this ceremony so that in all their days on earth they walk in beauty and with honor. Mahio, here on the eastern shore of this great land, bless all relatives with grace and the ability to forgive. Comfort and wipe the tears of all those who are in sorrow. Fill their hearts and minds with serenity and hope. Guide our hearts with compassion and wise spiritual direction so that we can think love and be love. So we can think peace and be peace. Mahio, naha, hinahane. Let it be so. And I don't know how many of you have ever heard of Henrietta Mann, but she was the one that, she was the one that said that prayer back in 2006. And so I thought it was a pretty powerful one. So, but yeah, I'll let you guys take it away. Thank you for joining us and look forward to a good program. And blessings to everyone.
All right, thank you very much. Yeah, and nice seeing your kids in there too. We have a couple of kids with us here too. Might have to scroll it over there and show you them there. We got a table set up for them for some activities over there. So I want to turn it over to the Grovers now. They're going to be singing us. Are we going to be singing Danny's version?
Yeah.
Okay, Danny's version of Jesus is Good Medicine.
Does anyone like to shake maracas or rattle?
Yeah.
Love the music?
I even got
Anybody grown up their kids? Anybody? Yeah, look at all these Casey made.
I know. Yeah, but you got to fill in deep. All right. Yeah.
Post that prayer on the good medicine way wall. That'd be great. That was really, really good.
So, yeah, we're gonna do the song that Danny Zachariah wrote, and then we're gonna do a Jonathan Miracle song. Apologies to anybody who's watching the live stream on Facebook because, often when I try to share a screen, the video goes blank, but you'll still be able to hear it. But, all right, here we go. Wetya, hey, aho, wetya. It's good, the good way. For you we feasted from. For you
Well, hey,
Good.
everybody. I'm sure that sounded amazing in the room.
Oh,
Unfortunately for us online, it was a silent movie, but we
Oh,
were blessed
let's-
anyway.
sing
Just
it
watching
again.
your enthusiasm. So that was terrific.
Oh, man. Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah. People are coming.
check, you're not here. Do you hear that? Check.
Yeah, we hear you now.
Sing one verse.
That's really weird.
Maybe let's sing one
I don't
verse.
know what happened.
All right.
So
Well-
it was incredible.
Yeah,
The best version of the song you ever heard.
Ever.
Just make that in your mind.
Yes, yeah. We'll do it again sometime, but it'll never be the same. All right. Well, this week in Turtle Island, we got Upadaka. She's going to be giving us that. She was our speaker here a couple of weeks ago, and it was just amazing that what she shared here. You're on. Where are you?
Hello, everybody. I decided for this week in Turtle Isle to dress in a bear dance dress from my Ute people. So for this week's happenings on the Turtle Island, Biden released a White House proclamation of the establishment of the Camp Hale Continental Divide National Monument, which is somewhere in northern Utah, which is where the homelands of the Northern Ute people. There are 3 bands that exist within the Ute tribe, are 7 bands that exist within the Ute tribes, and they split into 3 groups with one additional one that's starting to get recognized. We have the Northern Utes, which are the Uncompahgre and the Tabagetch. And then we have the Ute Mountain Utes, which are the women Nooch band of the Ute people. And then we have the Southern Ute people, who are the Capote and Mawatch people. I'm not really sure if that was 7 of them, but it goes somewhere around there. But the Ute tribes, the Biden failed to seek the consideration of the Ute tribes, mostly affecting the Northern Ute people. When it came to gaining, like, I guess you could say, an approval for the national monument to be erected. Let's see. The national monument that they have proclaimed occupies sacred Ute burial sites, and it was not of high priority with the Biden administration. While the Ute Mountain Utes and Southern Utes were mostly consenting, the proclamation with the Ute tribal leader from the Northern Ute was basically, he considered this to be a photo op, not so much to actually care about the Ute people. Hey. So yeah, that was just like a photo op. He just wanted to take a picture with the Ute people, saying that they agreed with this, and the Northern Utes have expressed that they do not, they don't approve of it. Another thing that the Biden administration unfortunately did not execute very well was that there was a 1 week or so notice before this monument had been something that they were going to do. So and they weren't, the Biden especially was noted in the CPR article that was shared with me, that they what was it, that he did not handle it in a very well way, with not acknowledging the people that were originally there, with not taking into consideration the burial sites that are there, the sacred spaces that we have in the northern Utah area. And to me, it just seems like it was very poorly handled. Looks like Biden was just trying to get on the good side of the Indians without actually caring what was really happening. And it's quite a controversy right now. So yeah, that's what I learned for this week on Turtle Island. So yeah, thank you for letting me share.
Oh, I know how people can be sometimes when they try to express, what really gets me sometimes, and I hear these farmers, they would say, my family has been on this land for 150 years and we deserve our rights. And I just, give me a break, So sometimes it's got to be done in a good way. I think maybe next time his writers will have to give him something good to say on that, because there's some good land acknowledgements out there that they could use. So Creation Insights tonight. Jibajikwe is going to be sharing with us. And I really got inspired. I think hearing her message here and knowing that she's using her native name, we were talking a little bit, and I thought, I think we should just all start using our native names and then just let them get used to it. It just takes time, because it took a little time to get used to your name. But from my name, Anaqua Nonia, so maybe we'll work that in a little bit at a time there. So Dr. Anaqua Nonia, uncle to everybody. So Jibajikwe, take it away.
Ani Tanze, everybody. I just want to speak of this weekend. We had our 4th Oski Squawk gathering out on the land, and I always and I don't know why, because Creator always good things always happen, but I mean, just there's always concern and apprehension on my part. But yeah, like we had 5 young women come and join us. And the theme for the gathering was Kaskayewan, which means belonging. And so wanting our young people to know that they belong, because that's been a struggle, my personal struggle of finding community, finding family, but then realizing sometimes we create our own community where we feel that we belong. And so that's kind of where we're inviting our young people into these spaces. And so when you see them, when I pick them up, then so it's about an hour and a half away from Regina to this camp. And so for that hour and a half, like nobody's talking to each other. Like it's just silence in the van. And so like I'm trying to make small talk, but these young preteens and teens, they don't want anything to kind of do with me, which is fine, but I still try to talk. And so, but then you see from like when they first, how quickly actually they connect with one another when you just create that space and you just allow that organic relationship and those connections to grow. And so by the time supper time there was a bit of conversation, but not a lot, but probably, I don't know, I would say probably a half hour after supper, they were very loud, boisterous, and engaging. And so then you see that relationship being fostered throughout the weekend. And so that's kind of that space of, yeah, just when you create space, Creator moves, the Spirit moves within each one of us, and we can't dictate how people are going to get along with one another. And we just allow that to happen. And so through the weekend, 2 other, I guess, things kind of popped out. So we had Michelle come and join us for the weekend, and she of course brought so much medicine and goodness. And so one of the things that she brought with her was miyasin, which is Cree for it is good. And that and then she talks about how as women, especially with our young women, is realizing how beautiful we are. And so that's also part of that foundation of where I want our young women to look in the mirror and not only like who they see, but love who Creator has created them to be. And so that just everything that we're doing in that space, and then Michelle kind of bringing in more good medicine for our young people, and in a softer way that they can receive and not shut down when we have those conversations. And so she was a light for us this weekend. And then the other thing that came out was called Akameyokmok, which is don't give up. And so those 3 words, Cree words, and so we're also trying to incorporate the language back into the programs that we're doing, because it's also healing and it's reconnecting us to the land and to Creator. And so then it's as we're trying to reclaim our culture, we're trying to reclaim our language. And I see the response from our young people. And for us, our program isn't about I actually had this conversation with somebody prior to. And so, because he was saying that it wasn't Christ-centered, that he wanted to partner with somebody who was more Christ-centered than just about cultural reclamation. And so then I was sitting with that and I was like, but Christ is in me. Christ is in many of our volunteers that come, and loving upon these girls is Christ-centered. And that we want to lift these young people up so that they can begin to see the light and love of Creator within them. Because a lot of times we see kids who are more people pleasing, and it's not about them. It's about wanting to be liked or feel belonged because of another person. And so trying to help them see that Creator lives in them. And so we talked about the fire within, and how sometimes it's just an ember, and being part of these spaces, being part of these circles, that Creator lights that fire, and then that yearning coming within, that they start to have that relationship with Creator, not because they are trying to impress somebody else, or like I said, people please. And so it was just, again, like I mean, it was an exhausting weekend for me, but at the end, it's always so fulfilling to see the connections that our young women make with the people that are around the circle and are looking forward to coming back and are excited of coming back. But also talking with the one mom last night of just how they felt safe, how they felt at ease of just being themselves, and to, yeah, like just to see creator work within each one of them, of coming initially with no voice, and then throughout the weekend having a voice and speaking for themselves throughout the weekend, and stepping into some of those uncomfortable positions, because we kind of make them do some skits, and so having to stand up in front of the group. And they do it without, like when you look at some in this classroom, like they're like, no, I don't want to stand up in front of the class. But they stand up and they're proud of their accomplishments, and then they feel supported around that. And so it was a beautiful weekend, and I'm looking forward to many more weekends with these young people and new people that keep coming. We had 3 new girls join us this weekend. And so just seeing how, just creating space and allowing creator to flow within each of our participants. It's just, it's amazing. And sometimes we don't have to be that formal in structuring in, let's say, church, where creator is everywhere. Creator is walking amongst us. And if we just allow him to do what he needs to do, beautiful things grow out of that, and grow out of the people that are in that space. And so, hi, thank you for letting me speak.
Awesome, great. Thanks for the work that you do. Let's give her a hand. That's something. Working with the young girls. Someone who was talking with me not too long ago, and they were saying that because we took all of our kids and our son, we took them all through rites of passage as they were growing up. And we even created one. My daughter turned 30, and she wanted something to help her move on into, she's no longer like a younger lady. No, she's moving into a more mature young lady. And so we created a ceremony for her 30-year-old birthday. And those are all special, and they help us move on in our walk. So with that, I would turn it over to Preston Jones, who's going to be reading the Creator's Word for us from 2 different verses here, Genesis and also from 1 Timothy. So, Preston. Hey, Preston, I was just thinking, as I'm seeing you sitting in that car, I thought maybe you could do something like that smoke signals thing. What'd they say, Brian? Here on route?
Lester falls apart. Broke it down at the crossroads in 1972.
Yeah. Giving a traffic report from the Navajo Nation here and through. All right, Preston.
Well, giving you the scripture of the day from the Highway 371. I only saw a few cars pass by earlier, so this will be a good scripture today. We're going to start with Genesis today. Genesis 2:7. Then the Lord God formed the man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. Then the man became a living being. Next one, we're going to come from 1 Timothy. We're going to be out of the First Nations version. 1 Timothy 6:17 through 19. Okay, I was reading. For those who have many possessions, instruct the ones who have many possessions in this present world not to see themselves as better than others. They must not put their hope in their many possessions, which cannot be depended on, but in the Great Spirit, who, from his great possession, provides all we need to enjoy life. Instruct them to walk in a great way, to process many good deeds, and to be willing and ready to share with those in need. In this way, They will be storing up and preparing themselves for the life of the world to come. The true life of beauty and harmony that never grows old or fade away. The word of the Lord.
There in Theru. Thank you so much. So we'll give you something to work on there in your next introduction there. Well, smoke signals. This is our time of what's going on in our land here and also our announcement time. So we're going to give it over to Leah.
All right. Well, yeah, as far as smoke signals, if you have, that's our new term for our announcements. So if you have any announcements, you can put them in the chat or the YouTube comment section, and we can read them here or let you say them. The announcement that I have is on Wednesday night at 7 Mountain Time is our women's circle, and we're going through the lost history of Christianity, which my daughter recommended to me. It talks about the first few hundred years of Christianity when it was really big in like Asia, Africa, the Middle East, really big in places we just have never heard of because we kind of get usually more of the Western theology from Europe. So this is very interesting. So that's for any of the women, Wednesday night at 7 Mountain Time. And the link is at the top of our Good Medicine Way Facebook group, either in the events tab or over on the left. It's under the browse section under events. And as far as the offering or the giveaway, as we call it now, how you would give to the work of Good Medicine Way is also to go right to the top of the Good Medicine Way Facebook group, and there's a logo there to click on to donate through PayPal. So if there's any more smoke signals for us, just type them in and we'll read them out for you.
So I do have a smoke signal. So I just realized that if Windows doesn't update, Zoom will reset all of its settings and turn back on all its harsh filtering, which interprets music as background noise. So that's what happened before. So hopefully it should all be sorted now. But if your Windows does update, make sure you check all your settings because it'll mess them all up.
I know technology, we're making the best of it here and we're really making an impact too. We got a full screen of people on here tonight and it's amazing what I think we've been forced into it, but I think it's a good thing because we got to flow with the times. We got to change the way the world is changing. Otherwise, we're going to miss the boat on reaching people and ministering to folks too. So we're
It's like a Petadaka.
Petadaka, you got your hand up there. Go ahead.
You all know the Wood Jesus Eat Fry Bread Conference is coming up.
Yeah.
The Wood Jesus Eat Fry Bread Conference, November 11th through the 13th in El Reno, Oklahoma. We are currently seeking people who are willing to donate blankets. Anybody else who may be able to donate blankets to this cause. The blankets are very special. I'm pretty sure that Preston and Heather and anybody who's actually ever gone has been keeping their blankets with them as comfort and knowing that we're all wrapped in Creator's love. And also we are currently seeking dancers, any type of dancers that like powwow dancers who would be willing to donate their time while they attend the conference or just to attend the conference for the evening time. And that will be on Friday. So Would Jesus Eat Fry Bread, November 11th through the 13th in El Reno, Oklahoma.
Been to a couple of those over the years. And just today, Damian Costello and we had coffee with Renee and Donnie Begay too. So they're always very active, involved in that too. And it's very blessed to have time to meet with them a little bit. They're busy. They're very busy folks. And we're got a time. We slowed them down a little bit there to have a cup of coffee today. So keep them in prayer as they're keep me in prayer. I'll be going this coming weekend here. I'll be going to Anaheim to the Native American United Methodist Church there with a conference that they call the Westpac. the native churches from the West Coast are going to be meeting for a meeting there and want to hear from me about what we're doing here and how we do ministry out of the box. So we're trying to get that, like that Jesus is trying to get that package out of the box. So we're working on that. So other than that, if you've got another announcement, we can still put it in chat, and then we'll put it out.
Yeah, Sarah put something in about there's a Supreme Court case regarding the Indian Child Welfare Act that they're going to hear that on November 9th. I don't know if you want to say more about that, Sarah, because you certainly know most of what I know about it. I got from your podcast. So.
Thank you very much. I'll be talking about it tonight. So I'll save it up. We can talk about it and love to more conversation.
All right, sounds good. So yeah, so that's November 9th. So yeah, definitely be lifting up prayers for that, and we'll hear more about it later.
All right. Okay, now we're going to go to Ken. Ken Gingrich is going to be introducing our speaker tonight because he knows her very well. She's been down here to their church and has spoken here, so I'll turn it over to Ken.
All right. Can you all hear me okay?
I'll put it on you there.
All right. Yeah, so I'm coming to you from Albuquerque Mennonite Church, which is a little congregation that meets on the other side of the UNM campus from where we are tonight. I've learned to know Casey about, earlier this year, and I've been walking with Good Medicine Way since the spring, and I've been coming as I can and learning a lot. I've really appreciated being able to be in this circle. So about 8 years ago, I was invited to a gathering in San Francisco where I encountered a variety of, this is a Mennonite gathering, pastors, denominational workers, a number of lay folk, and it included a number of indigenous folks, people of color, but mostly white settler folks like me. We were introduced to a phrase that was unfamiliar to me at that point, the doctrine of discovery. And although I knew intuitively that this country was built on lands that had previously been occupied by indigenous peoples, I, like most of us in our dominant culture, hadn't really thought much about it and what it means to live on and hold title to land that has literally been stolen. So this began a journey of learning for a growing number of folks in my denomination, and of course, there's a movement across a number of denominations that are joining in this. The gathering was organized by 3 women, Sarah Augustine, who you'll hear from shortly, Sherry Hustetler from San Francisco, and Anita Amstutz, who was my pastor here in Albuquerque. And out of this meeting has grown a grassroots movement we call the Dismantling the Doctrine of Discovery Coalition. It's changed and grown over the years, and we have worked to bring awareness to our congregations. We have listened as deeply to indigenous voices as we've sought ways to become allies and supporters of land recovery efforts, walked with international indigenous partners in Guyana and Mexico, and we are currently accompanying the San Carlos Apache people in Arizona in their struggle to retain access and right to ceremony at Oak Flat, which is a mountain that they go to. It's being threatened by international copper mining companies, by a company, and so we're accompanying them. And as Sarah mentioned, our number of our churches have filed amicus briefs in support of the ICWA project that's underway, the lawsuit. Anyway, we've also formed a repair network, encouraging our congregations to engage locally and meaningfully in the hard work of repair and to struggle deeply with the implications of the right of return of land in whatever ways that can happen. Very recently, the coalition was very happy to be able to hire Sarah Augustine as our executive director. Sarah is Pueblo Tewa descent. She's from this part of the country. She's a graduate of the University of New Mexico, and most recently was the executive director of a dispute resolution center in central Washington state. She lives in Washington. She is also the co-founder of Suriname Indigenous Health Fund, through which she has advocated for vulnerable Indigenous peoples since 2004. Long list of things that she's done. She's been a part of the, she represents the interests of Indigenous community partners to their own governments, the Inter-American Development Bank, the United Nations, the Organization of American States, Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, the World Health Organization, and a host of other international actors, including corporate interests. In 2011, she co-wrote with the World Council of Churches the Statement on the Doctrine of Discovery and its enduring impacts on Indigenous people, and shared in the creation of the Ecumenical Indigenous Peoples Network. She has also taught at Heritage University, Central Washington University, and Goshen College. This past year, she was asked to chair the State of Washington's redistricting committee. So she's been around. She employs shuttle diplomacy and group decision-making strategies to de-escalate conflict and to establish common ground between Indigenous communities and external interests. She has written for Sojourners magazine, various Mennonite publications, and Response magazine. She is currently a columnist for Anabaptist World, which is our denominational publication. She co-hosts the Doctrine of Discovery podcast, which Brian mentioned. It's a great podcast. She and her husband, Dan Piplo, and their son live in Washington's Yakima Valley on Yakima Nation land. And she is the author of a book, The Land is Not Empty, Following Jesus in Dismantling the Doctrine of Discovery. So, Sarah, your good friend, anxious to hear what you have to say tonight.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Ken. All right. Sarah, take it away.
Thank you. Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate you being willing to take the time to hear my words. So I am coming to you today from the homelands of the Confederated Bands and Tribes of the Yakima Nation, the Yakima Indian Reservation, where I live with my family. And I'm very proud to be a guest here on the Yakima lands. I've lived here for the last 16 years. And but I'm not Yakima. I'm very much just a guest here. I'm lucky to live here on 200 acres where I raise cattle with my husband and my son. I'm actually of Tewa descent. And so I want to just break down a little bit who I am. I think I have a pretty complicated identity. So try and kind of unpack that with you. You know, every 10 years when the census comes out and you got to say what race you are, the box that I check or the one I fill in is Native American, because by race, I'm Native. My mom is mestiza, so her people have been on this land 500 years. In New Mexico, people know what mestizos are. It's a combination of Native people and Spanish colonizers. And my dad, his family is Tewa from the Nambe Pueblo. And so, you know, technically I'm half Tewa, but, you know, my genetics say I'm probably more than half Native person. But I don't have tribal affiliation. So one of the things I want to share with you tonight is that tribal affiliation is a political designation. It is related to a tribe or a government body. A tribe is a government body that acknowledges you. So a tribe is kind of like a state. In Washington State, for example, the state itself has sovereignty. The state of California has sovereignty. Idaho, you know, all the states, they're sovereign states. And so the national government has imbued them with the authority to govern the people that live in their boundaries. And a Native American tribe is like that. They have autonomy and the right to self-governance that is acknowledged, let me just use that word, by the federal government, because of course Native peoples don't need permission to be sovereign. They have always been, but that is acknowledged by the federal government. And then they have the status of a tribe. I'm really talking about federally recognized tribes. And so the tribe that I am from, that my ancestors are from, I don't have any tribal affiliation with that tribe. And I want to explain a little bit about why. So over the last 300 years, really longer than that, but let's just say since the United States has been a country, there has been a national policy, a series of national policies to remove indigenous peoples from their lands. So you've heard about removal, the time where people were pushed, the Trail of Tears, and the people were pushed out of the eastern seaboard and to cross the Mississippi. And then also there was termination. There was, the reservation era where Native peoples were forced onto what were termed homelands, and they lost much of unceded territories. Well, a very important enterprise in removing indigenous people from their lands. In fact, I would say probably the most successful policy has been child removal. So have you heard about child removal? It's not something that's a new idea. One really important type of child removal was the reservation era, or the boarding school era, where kids were issued court orders to leave the custody of their parents and be put into schools. Really, essentially, they were camps to reprogram Native youth, right? So I think of them as being like concentration camps. These youths were put in concentration camps. They're removed from their families. Most importantly, they're removed from their lands, right? I mean, they're sent to a place to be assimilated. And so as as this boarding school process was coming to an end, then there were a variety of other strategies to remove children from their homes. So by the time 1978 rolled around, 1 in 4 Native kids in the United States had been removed from their family. 1 in 4, 25% of Native American kids. That is, and I don't mean they were in boarding schools. They weren't. They were in foster homes. So child removal was a very effective way of removing Native kids from their homes. So one of those people that was removed from his home in 1944 was my father. So he lost contact with his family at birth. He was removed at the hospital from the custody of his parents. That was not uncommon. So he didn't go into an adoptive home. He went into actually, it was called a foster home, but it was really more like an orphanage. It was a Catholic boys' home. And so this was a place that kids of color went. A lot of them were Native or else Latino. And they worked on a farm. So this was an orchard and a farm, and he earned his keep by being labor on that farm. And so, he endured physical abuse and emotional abuse and mental abuse while in that setting. And the other thing I want to say is that he was put in a situation that was hundreds of miles away from his homeland. So he grew up in a city, major urban area, hundreds of miles away from his land and his people and his parents and any relations. So essentially, he was assimilated from the time of birth. And, hear stories about people who go through this kind of thing, this horrible environment and terrible treatment. My dad is not a person who has one of those courageous stories where he overcame all the issues and, made $1 million or something like that. He could not endure it. It was too hard. And he struggled with mental illness and addiction. He was in and out of jail throughout my childhood. And so I myself grew up in an extremely chaotic, violent environment. Chaotic, violent. I grew up in the underclass. So that is to say, in extreme poverty, which is common among people in my generation and certainly among Native American people. And so, while I grew up in New Mexico, I grew up in Albuquerque. Those of you who are there in Albuquerque, I graduated from Sandia High School. Hey, I rode the bus and went out of district to to Sandia, where I graduated. And then I went to University of New Mexico. So although I'm a Native American person by race, I don't have any tribal affiliation nor any connection to my kin. And so the reason I'm telling you this story is to say that, it's my experience and it's my identity, but also to say there are many of us, many Native American people like me, who have no contact with traditional lifeway, with the culture and the people and the land and all the things that our public health officials call protective factors. So kids like me, kids who grew up in the environment where I grew up, are at high risk for drug abuse, for teen suicide, for engagement in crime, criminal activity, and culture and language, spirituality, and kinship ties. Those are things called protective factors. Those protect kids from getting involved in that kind of stuff. And many Native American people are like me, where they don't have those protective factors. So my mom grew up in a Catholic boarding school, and my dad grew up in a Catholic boys' home. So I didn't grow up with any kin, any relatives or ancestors, or any kin at all. So whatever chaos was going on in my home, there was no opportunity for relief. There was no help. There weren't people that were there to provide any kind of support. So in my life, the only way out of a really dangerous and difficult and very painful situation was to grow up. That was the only option for me. And as I've grown up and walked through this life, I've learned that I'm not alone. There are a lot of Native people out there in the world that are like me. So 70% of Native Americans in the United States live in the urban environment. Most Native American people don't live on the reservation. And this is a very, very effective way that the federal government had of removing Indigenous people from their lands. So it's estimated that, at the time that colonization began here in North America, there were 100 million Native people living in North America. Anybody have any idea how many Native American people there are today in the United States? A high estimate is 6 million. So think about that for a minute. At the time of colonization, there were 100 million people here. So in the United States today, there's 330 million people. So if we hadn't had any growth at all in all these years, we should be 1 in 3. But in fact, a very sort of generous estimate is 6 million. People say 4 to 6 million Native American people left. And that number actually, in many Native environments, is dwindling because of the very effective policy eras of removing Indigenous people from their lands through urbanization programs, but especially through child removal. So in 1978, there was a congressional investigation into the removal of Indigenous kids, and the Indian Child Welfare Act was passed, and it became the law. And the Indian Child Welfare Act, it's got a nickname. It's called ICWA. It was passed to prevent other kids from going through what my dad went through, which is to say, instead of being removed into a foster home and placed in a white home or a home of the dominant culture, there would be preference for Indigenous kids to be put with Indigenous families, most importantly with their kin. So every effort should be made to keep, if they have to be removed from their parents for their safety or for whatever reason, that they would be placed with family members. And if they couldn't be placed with family members, at least another member of their own tribes that could stay on their own lands. And if they couldn't find another tribal member, then they would be placed with another Native American family, someone who would at least understand the experience of being Native American in the United States. And so if that can't happen, then they could be adopted or fostered by a white family. So it's not against the law, but the Indian Child Welfare Act provides this protection and safety to Native kids so that they have the opportunity to be placed in a Native environment if they have the chance to do that. Most importantly, maybe the most important thing about this law of all is that the tribe has a right to have a say in the placement of the child. So instead of just the state deciding where that child is going to be placed, the tribe, because it's a sovereign entity, it is a decision-making body, it is a government system, that tribe has a right to have a seat at the table in the placement of that child. And so I want to tell you a little bit more about my story, because I think it's really important to understand that, when something like that happens, like what happened to my dad, he was removed from the care of his mother, and he was placed into a very dangerous and difficult situation where he was really subjected to abuse and torture and starvation and all kinds of stuff. And he did not endure that very well. And then he became a parent, and he became my parent. And, today he suffers from schizophrenia. He's had a really difficult life. And what that meant for me is that I grew up alone. I have siblings. There's 8 kids in my family, actually. And but I grew up without any relatives or any kind of context. So everything that I learned about being Native American was from the racial slurs that were coming from other kids picking on me at school. I didn't know anything about who I was. All I wanted to do was to assimilate as quickly as possible. My parents both had problems, and in retrospect, I can understand why. But at the time, being a kid, I didn't ever have the right pair of shoes, or, I remember getting shoes twice a year, and often went to bed without enough to eat, and definitely mocked and just bullied at school for being poor, for sure, but also for being Native, for being a kid of color, and without any kind of support. And no way to make sense of the story. So it's kind of like, what I can do is just get out of here. That's what I want to do. I just want to get out of here. So, I thought the way that I'm going to get out of here is I'm going to go to college. I'm going to be the first person in my family to go to college, and my plan was to be a professor at Stanford. That's what I'm going to do. I want to be a professor at Stanford. Then no one can ever make fun of me anymore, because I'll have power, I'll have position, and people will think I'm smart, and they can't kick me around anymore. And so that's what I did. I was like, man, I'm going to assimilate. I want to just look like everyone else. I want to look like everyone else. I want to act like everyone else and talk like everyone else. And when I get into that status, when I have that status and I earn some money, then people will have to take me seriously. And so, it's a difficult and lonely place to be, because, those people who are Native American know that one thing, whether you want to be Native or not, whether you're proud of being Native or not, the people in this country are never going to let you forget that you're Native. It's not like you have a choice to be Native. You get to be Native no matter what. So what happened was that when I was then in graduate school, I moved to the University of Washington, or you moved to Washington to go to the University of Washington, graduate school there. And I ended up on a multidisciplinary team to go to Suriname, South America, and to work. It was actually an environmental project to work with Indigenous peoples who are impacted by mining. And because I'm a trained sociologist, my job was to help interact with the people there. So here I am, a Native woman in South America, interacting with Indigenous people. And what I saw was an environment where these Indigenous people their bodies were impacted. Every single person in the community, we went to many communities, every single person was tested, they have this poison in their body from mining, and they don't have land rights. They don't have any rights because of international law and because of the law of their own nation. We ground this in the doctrine of discovery, which is a legal doctrine. But anyhow, they don't have rights. So It's totally illegal for a mining corporation, usually American or Canadian, to go into their lands and consume all the gold and precious metals there, and to all the waste and contaminate the water and the soil, and so that everybody is everybody is destroyed by that. And so mercury is a neurotoxin. It means that it destroys everything that has to do with the nervous system, your brain and spinal column, all the nerves. And so, this is especially hard and impactful on infants because they are absorbing that multiplied by many, many, many times in utero. And so there's a lot of birth defects and just a terrible situation. So, I'm in this environment and I'm just, shocked and dealing with, the rainforest, the people who are suffering there and being confronted by that reality. And it was through this experience of walking with Indigenous people in the rainforest that I started to learn about my own story, because I could see that their story was really my story, that my story was the same. And that where they were headed is the place that I come from. So they're still living on their lands. They're still being, removed and poisoned and all this stuff, which is maybe what happened to my people, 150 or 200 years ago. They're experiencing that now. The place that they're going is most people are going to die, and the few people who are going to survive are going to be marginalized. And so through relationship with them, I started to come to some understanding about my own life and my own parents' stories. And anyway, I have to just tell you one quick story about this, because I'm in this rainforest environment, and there was a lady there. She's an elder. And I was there with a team. Almost everybody on the team was white. I think I might have been certainly the only Native person, but the only woman of color there. And this elder looks at me and she points her finger at me, and she's explaining what's going on. She's going to be treated for diabetes. And when she goes to the town to be treated for diabetes, she's gone for 3 days or something. She comes back and her home has been bulldozed, and there's been a fence put up around her whole village. So all the people are squatting on the side of the road because their land has been taken over, which is totally legal. It's not against the law because a corporate interest has come in and decided they want that land. And so she's looking at me, maybe the only face that looks familiar to her. And she says, "Are you going to help me?" And I was like, "What can I do? I'm just a graduate student. I'm just looking around, like, what can I do?" And she demanded, she wanted me to answer her. "Are you going to help me? Yes or no?" And I said, I'll try and help you. This is all through a translator. We don't speak the same language. And I said, "Well, I can try and help you." And she said, "No, I'm not interested in any of things you have to say. Either help us or go away." And so I thought, okay, yeah, I'm gonna help you. I don't know what I can do, but I'm gonna help you. And I think that was in 2006. And so all these years I've been connected to the people in Suriname. I've watched little children grow up and have children of their own. I have been in relationship with people there all these years. And they were really the teachers for me to help me understand the context of my own people and to make sense of the growing up experience that I had. Because I was in relationship with them, I really felt that I had told this elder that I was going to help her. Her name was Dina, and that I was responsible to do that. And so I started going to these various agencies looking for help, like the United Nations Environmental Program, and sort of knocking on the door and saying, "Hey, this is going on. And do you know there's a mercury problem there in Suriname? What can you do about it?" And, it seemed like every door I would knock on, I would be turned away. Went to the World Health Organization, the American Red Cross, these big non-governmental agencies like the World Wildlife Fund. You know what the World Wildlife Fund told me? They said, "We're the World Wildlife Fund, not the World People Fund." Went to the Nature Conservancy, the US State Department, all these people trying to figure out what to do. And it was like, basically it was really the State Department who said, "There's nothing here that's going on that's illegal, so back up, like this is fine. This is just the way it is. There was one administrator who told us this is happening exactly the way it was planned. The funding for all of this mining has come from the World Bank. It's underwritten by the development banks, and in 2 generations they'll all be gone. That's the plan. And I thought, that's my story. That is the story of the people that I come from. So I was like, I have to do something to intervene. I can't just give up in despair. And, I started speaking and talking and organizing and trying to get people together. And when I went to the World Council of Churches, ultimately, the World Council of Churches has more than 350 member denominations on the earth. And when they started working on the World Council of Church, or when they started working on the Doctrine of Discovery, which is this body of law and policy that has caused all of this destruction for Indigenous peoples, I was the only person who volunteered to work on that with them. And so I therefore wrote the statement together with Bob Miller and Steve Newcomb and some other Indigenous leaders. We together wrote this statement and then worked for about 2 years trying to get the World Council of Churches, once they adopted the statement, to actually take action on it. Because from my point of view, I was fighting for the survival of this people. And many of you will, I'm sure, relate to this. In time, I learned that those people in Suriname, those rainforest people, are my people, that it's my job to speak for them, that those are my relations. I wear this every time I speak to remind me of that. This was given to me by a tribal leader, and I always wear it to remind myself that I don't speak for myself. I'm speaking for my people. And who are my people? Who are my relations? Through this experience, I started to try and find out who my people are. Who are the Tewa people? First reading in books and then actually taking a trip and trying to figure out, who I'm related to and how I can become in relationship, because, of course I have a son and I want him to grow up knowing who his people are. And working with some elders, a variety of elders from a lot of different traditions. There was one elder, Stan McKay, who's a Cree. He's actually from Canada, the Canada side of the border, said to me, Sarah, you at some point have to have water ceremony because you have so much fire, all that fire in you. It's not natural. He said, fire is for young men. You're gonna need some ceremony with water. I was like, oh my gosh, how do I do that? I don't know anything. I don't know how to do anything. So I had a friend, Mark McDonald, who is the Archbishop for the Episcopal Church of Canada. I met him through the World Council of Churches. And I said, Mark, Stan McKay told me I need water ceremony. He's like, okay, I'm going to help you find someone in New Mexico who's going to help you do that. But I went to New Mexico. I got on a plane with my family and we went to, to the land that my grandmother walked on, and went to the water, and I did prayer ceremony. I prayed for her, for my grandmother who had her little baby taken away. She lost her son. And I prayed for that healing to happen in the line, for her and for my father too. And for the ancestors to come, for my ancestors to come back to me, to be in my life, even though we were separated. And Stan told me, Stan McKay, he said, you don't go talk to the people, go talk to the land. You have to walk on your land and go talk to the water. And you have to reconnect with that land. That's your land. And that's what I did. And, I've had a lot of water ceremonies since then. I still feel that fire, though, still burning in me, still doing all this work, still burning with that need for my people. And so anyway, this summer I was really privileged to get to come. I was in Albuquerque this summer for our annual meeting, and I got to go spend some time up in the north the Tewa Women United and did ceremony with them over 3 days. And as I was walking up there in Bandelier, I was with my son who's turned 13. We were walking up there. I was like, this land we're walking on, this soil right here is made up of the remains of our ancestors. So not only your grandmother, and grandfather, but also the people before them, but also all of our ancestors, which is like all of the four-legged ones and the winged ones and all of the Standing Green Nation, which is what a Dene elder and mentor of mine, Steve Darden, has taught me to call all the plant life, that the Standing Green Nation, all of those generations are also our ancestors. And all of that makes up the soil on this very precious and sacred land. And, actually all of the land that surrounds all of us is sacred. All of it is made up of that. Are we able to show that reverence for that land? The creation story that we heard, that creation story says that, the Creator took that soil from the ground and he blew breath into it. And with that, he made the human being. And that out of soil, and the soil that we walk on is it's life, right? It's a life support system of earth. And just like our sacred waters are a life support system, and the air is a life support system. And we're dependent on all of these things. And I've been taught, my elders have taught me from all these different traditions, these people who have spent time with me and sat in ceremony with me, that we're actually, all of us, living together in a closed system of mutual dependence, that we can't make new water, we can't make new air, we can't make new soil. We're here together on this earth, and we are mutually dependent. What one does impacts every other, and not just human beings, but all of life. That we are all connected, that we are all relations, that we are all relatives. And that's now, and I think, and I'm going to go speak, and I put this on, I put on my medicine bag, and I remember that I'm not just speaking for myself, I'm speaking for all of us, all my relations. And that's you too. That's all of you, my relations. And I think about that, in the scripture that we heard from Timothy, that in the dominant culture here, this idea is that in order for you to be successful, just like my plan to be successful, I'm going to go to Stanford, I'm going to get a good fancy job, I'm going to make a lot of money, I'm going to have a life for myself. That whole desire, individualist desire to think about myself first, or maybe myself only, and that I can just consume things and use things up, and that's an okay thing to do. It's completely opposite of the logic of life. The logic of life that is evident in creation, the creation that we see all around us, the sacred that we see every single day when I walk outside my door, that sacred soil right there, and the sky, and all the life that we have the privilege of being a part of. What a privilege to be part of this process of life. And that just consuming it for myself, or storing it up for my wealth or for my security so that I can feel safe, is selfishness. And that selfishness is destroying the earth. It's destroying that idea that it's only about me, not about the ones that came before me, not about the ones that come after. I don't have to give any thought to any of those. That kind of self-centered selfishness is destroying the opportunity for all of us to live in harmony, in a good way, to walk in beauty together in this earth. And so, my message tonight is that every earth, like every land is sacred land, like every place that we walk, it's all of it sacred. And that acknowledging that is a way of being in worship. It's a way of being and seeking right relationship with the Creator and with the elements of creation that surround us. And what a joy to be connected. We are not alone. We are here together with all of creation. We have the opportunity to touch the Creator in every moment. So in my tradition, we would say at the end, we say, whew. Breathe my intention. Thank you. Good job.
All right, thank you. Yeah, well, we've got a time here. We'll turn it over to Brian. It's going to lead us to our response and questions.
So yeah, just anybody who has a question or a comment, feel free. You can type them in the chats. And if we get a lineup of people, I'll try to keep track of the order so everyone gets a chance to interact who would like to.
Here's Jikabikwe.
All right,
Go ahead.
Jikabikwe.
Yeah, I feel you. I don't know how to explain it, but it really touched, it really resonated with me. And one of the things I'm starting to understand, and what we're hearing from the land too, is that since colonization, brought the patriarchal system. And so what I'm hearing from the elders up here is that the matriarchs are waking up and the matriarchs are taking their place. And so, and that fire within, don't cover it, like don't keep it, and hold on to that. And I think that the movement for the matriarchs are being united across Turtle Island. And so just hearing your story, hearing your journey, and I mean, unfortunately, that's so similar to a lot of people across Turtle Island with the boarding schools, residential schools, and both with like with the Indian Act for us here, like in Canada, and then the Child Welfare Act as well. Like, I mean, the similar things. And so I'm just, yeah, I don't know how to explain, but it's just like, I feel you. Like if there's something as like, I guess, women to women, strong Indigenous women, you know, who are paving the way for the younger generation. And so I honor you. And so I would say miigwech. Thank you.
Thank you for affirming that fire. If I could have put it out, I would have done it years ago. It just keeps burning. It doesn't ever go. It just burns, 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 burns. So there it is. Thank you for affirming that.
Yeah. So for up here, like some of the creation stories that we come from the stars. And so there will always be the fire burning within us. But with colonization, it's people have tried to put it out. So.
Question?
Go ahead.
All right. My little question was, who called it the Standing Green Nation, the trees? Who is that?
His name is Steve Darden, and he is a Dene elder. He actually lives in Flagstaff, and he's been a very important person in my life. And he is on the Human Rights Commission for the Dene people. Has been for many years. Yeah.
Cool.
I have a question.
Yeah, come on, yeah.
Hello, my name is Damien. I'm visiting Albuquerque from Vermont, where my family lives. So this summer, I'm also Catholic, and so the Pope Francis's visit to Canada, certainly there were some good things that happened there, but then at the end, as he's flying away, they asked him about the doctrine of discovery, and he answered something like, "Oh, I'm not really familiar with that." And so that was, well, very tough to hear, but I wonder, did you hear that, and how did you feel? And I'm sure you've made some progress where you are, but that certainly indicates that there's a whole lot left to go. Anyway, I'm just curious how you think about that.
Yeah. So the thing that we chose to do together, and Ken told you a little about it, was to create a coalition, and it's the Dismantling the Doctrine of Discovery Coalition. I want to be really clear that we are joining a movement that was created by the people that came before us. We're just joining and trying to be good animators during the time that we get to be alive here in the earth. So we're really reaching out to the church and trying to get the church to take responsibility, the Christian church to take responsibility for this thing that they've created. So the doctrine of discovery was created by the Christian church, specifically the Catholic Church originally, but you can't just say, oh, it's a Catholic thing, because the Anglican Church, all the churches adopted it. It was a system of policy to ensure that all the lands of the earth that could be colonized would be shared out among the European states. So it basically said that any place that had people that were non-Christians, those lands were empty of actual people because they didn't have the same kind of status as Europeans. It's very much a racially based body of policy. But you can't just leave it at the door of the church, because it was adopted into the canon in U.S. law in the United States in 1823 in a series of 3 decisions that are called the Marshall decisions. It is the law in the United States today. The doctrine of discovery. It was most recently cited in 2005, although subsequent sort of things have been cited as recently as last year in decisions about Indian law. So I certainly don't think it's up to me alone to try and get the word out about the doctrine of discovery. I've heard people tell me in church environments over the years, oh gosh, that's such a dry word. Why don't you come up with something better? And it's like, well, it is a legal doctrine. And so I don't get to decide what it's called. That's what it's called. It's enshrined with that name in our law in the United States. And like a lot of things that are oppressive, it's not something we teach about in schools, right? So most kids don't grow up learning about it. Most of us didn't learn about it in our college education or anything else. And so a big part of what we can do together in the Christian environment is to try and get other Christians knowing about it and talking about it. And raising awareness or educating ourselves is not enough. That's not the goal. The goal is to dismantle these laws and policies that define reality for Indigenous people today. So once we're informed, it's our responsibility to join together with Indigenous peoples that are working right now to create the world that we can all live in a good way. So that's why we're partnering with the National Indian Child Welfare Association, who reached out to us several years ago and asked us to bring Christians into the discourse around the Indian Child Welfare Act, to support the Indian Child Welfare Act, because the Supreme Court right now is hearing whether or not it should be considered unconstitutional. Did you know the Indian Child Welfare Act, it's been challenged more times than the Affordable Care Act? So you remember Obamacare and all the different times it's been challenged. The Indian Child Welfare Act has been challenged more times than that. So we're joining with them to support the Indian Child Welfare Act. We're joining with the Stronghold Apache at Oak Flat as they're trying to protect their native lands. We're shoulder to shoulder with them. Both of these cases are in the Supreme Court in the US. We're working together with Kakushtal, this group of Mayan folks in the Yucatan Peninsula that are trying to protect their sacred waters. It's very interesting. I've learned from them the way they talk about the waters there. They say, this water is a person. We are in relationship with this person, the water. The water is not a commodity. It's not a commodity to be used up or sold, but it's also not a commodity to be conserved, because it's not a thing, it's a person. And this is the understanding of many Indigenous peoples. They understand about their own lands, that they are in a relationship with relatives. This is not just some kind of abstract sort of thing. And so within the coalition, what we're working to do is to educate for sure, to raise awareness for sure, but then also to pull Christians into the struggle for life along Indigenous peoples, because Indigenous peoples are not just struggling for their rights or for their lands, they're struggling for the survival of all creation. So at Oak Flat, the largest copper mine in the history of the United States is going in. It's going to use more than 1 billion gallons of water in the Arizona desert, drawing from the aquifer and the Colorado River, both things that are already heavily extinguished. They're going to they're going to pump 1 billion gallons just to get the ore to the surface. That's not even talking about processing the ore. And so who is standing up for these waters? Who is standing up for the land in this Arizona desert? The stronghold Apache. I want to know, where are the people of Tucson? Where are the people of Phoenix? Who's going to be impacted by this? Not just the stronghold Apache. And yet indigenous people around the world struggle for the life support systems of Earth, for all of our survival. And we are very much trying to motivate people in the church to get together with indigenous peoples in the protection of the things that all of us need to survive, and that we are all relatives. So honestly, I don't really mind that much what the Pope knows or doesn't know. I can definitely have a big impact on the communities that are around me, and definitely try and get as many people as I can to notify as many people as they can, so that we can all be in the struggle together in the preservation of life.
Can feel a lot of fire right there.
That's very good.
Whew, getting hot in here.
Yeah, I kept thinking, like, when you were talking about doing water ceremony, I was like, man, I think that elder's just trying to turn you into like a powerful steam engine.
Steam engine.
Like-
Yeah. Your question there?
Yeah, one question I had just regarding ICWA, because I think a lot of, like you said, the controversial things of our history aren't taught in school. They just kind of get brushed under the carpet. So I think a lot of people aren't very familiar with what's going on, but just what the people who are challenging ICWA, like what are they alleging? Like why are they saying it's a problem?
So the case is called Holland versus Brackeen. It's the Holland versus Brackeen case. You could just Google that. You could look it up on Wikipedia and get the details. But I will tell you in the nutshell that at the end of the day, this is considered to be a discriminatory law because it's discriminating against white people. It's removing the right of white people to adopt Native kids. They're saying this is a racially motivated law and it discriminates against white parents. That's the basic premise of the case. So when I first started talking to you, I began by saying that tribal affiliation is actually not based on race. It's based on political affiliation, because there are a lot of people like me who are racially Native who don't have tribal affiliation. And so the ICWA, what it does is it provides these protections to kids who are enrolled or have the potential to be enrolled. So they're citizens of their own nations. And so that process is being challenged. And there are 3 states that have stood together with the Brackeen family. So this Brackeen family is trying to adopt. They've already adopted 1 Native kid, which is fine because it's not against the law, but they have attempted to adopt another. And they have been joined by Indiana and Louisiana and Texas. So the attorneys general of those 3 states have said that ICWA is unconstitutional and should be struck down. And those 3 states together contain less than 1% of Native Americans in the country. So the 3 states that are in this case are not states like Oklahoma and Washington and Montana, where a lot of Native American people live. Those states, North Dakota, Minnesota, all those attorneys general are fighting to uphold the Indian Child Welfare Act.
Do you have any theories as to why those states care so much? Like they just have to have Native babies?
I do have theories, and as do other people. I'm trying to remember the name. There was a really good podcast that came out about this. Season 2 of This Land is all about ICWA, the Indian Child Welfare Act. If tribal sovereignty is undermined, that is to say, if it's found that tribal sovereignty itself is unconstitutional, that is going to remove a lot of rights that Native American tribes have, which includes gaming. So what it would do is it would create opportunity for other kind of economic interests to come in. So there are many people who believe that ICWA really doesn't have anything to do with children even. It has to do with financial interests that are going to be more open if Native American tribes no longer have sovereignty that's guaranteed to them. So ICWA could provide the Supreme Court an opportunity to roll back 150 years of Indian law that provides sovereignty. So that's one theory.
Well, I have a good story from about ICWA, and my brother and his wife raised their 2 kids, and they graduated, and they took in 3 native kids from our tribe and raised them, and even took in one with that had some special needs as well. And they raised 2 of them. One's going into the Army and one's going into the college now. But they were raised in a Potawatomi family, and it was from our Potawatomi tribe. So it does have some really good outcomes from it. Very good. Anyone else? Double check the screens.
Yeah, it looks like. All right, last chance for comments. Peanut gallery, anybody?
Well, I hope that you guys feel the fire that she has. I know there's some of us out there that are really, this is the way that you like to serve and find ways to, the environment is your thing to tackle. Everybody has their, what do you say? Everybody's got their wars to fight. So everybody pick up your weapons and go on after it, and try to make some good out of what's going wrong in the world. Thank you, Sarah. It's very nice to have you with us, and we get to have Ken here. Ken is always with us here. He keeps us posted on you, and also we have some books. Ken has some of the books, and if you'd like one, we have some here. We could probably get to you if you want one. Anybody out there? So, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Sure appreciate it.
Yes, very nice to have you. I wish we would have caught you when you were here, but I was busy traveling, and a couple of us were able to get over there. So thank you for being in this area too. So yeah, with that, let's turn it over to our closing song here. And then we'll go right from that with Preston with our sending us off in a good way.
All right, yeah, we're gonna do our standard
There you go.
round dance.
Gotta get us. All right.
Yeah, and hopefully I got.
Yeah, we got a trip too.
Flap your arms right away if you can't hear us. Were we gonna mention that Damien is speaking here at Good Medicine Way in December? Yeah, you know. No, so Damien will be speaking about black elk here at Good Medicine Way on December 5th, which I'm very looking forward to. Black elk is such an interesting character, especially with, people are like, is he Catholic? Is he Native? What is he? So join us as we explore the mystery.
And December 6th was his baptismal day.
Oh, yeah.
St. Nicholas Day. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
Oh, perfect.
All right. Get back to the song. Yes, and feel free to sing, round dance, drum, whatever way you want to give it up to Creator in your own space there.
All right, Preston, send us off.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everybody that enjoyed tonight. And thank you for the wonderful music. It was just really interesting to hear a different perspective that was so different from mine. I'm glad for the stories. I'm glad for having us being able to do different things, being able to make change that is going to be able to allow us to understand each other's stories, able to hear the stories that would need to be heard to change what's going on. So let's come together in prayer and be able to allow us to continue soaking this moments. Heavenly Father, Creator, thank you for having us come together to hear stories of different lifelines, different heritage, different ways of living. Allow us to be able to know that you were there, that you are still working in different midst, and that you are part of everyone's story. Thank you for allowing us to be part of hearing and understanding and be able to make change and be wanting to make a stand for the things that you want to be on this earth, to love, to bring out the life and light of another person, and to bring forth their great abilities. Thank you for being every part of our day. So, Heavenly Father, allow us to take these words and these wisdom into the next.
Well, thank you. That was probably the best ending ever that we missed. So, Preston, you locked up there on the very end there, but those of us that can read lips, we were very inspired. And thank you. They're out on, what road you on out there?
317, I think.
371. All right,
Yeah.
thank you, everyone. All right.
So I did see that Umpedadaka had said that on the Facebook feed that the sound wasn't messed up, which makes sense because that's going through a completely different feed, so it didn't have all the Zoom filters.
Okay.
So yeah, if you re-listen on Facebook, any of the things that you couldn't hear, hopefully you can hear. But trying to find video archives on Facebook is a challenge, so it'll be a treasure hunt for me. But yeah, thanks everybody for coming. Who's up next week?
Next week is the 31st. It's a prayer night.
Okay,
So come and
so-
get
Yeah, come
recharged.
join us for prayer. We can definitely be praying about the ICWA court case. And yeah, so if you have any burdens that you want to bring, any praises you want to bring, and we'll definitely just try to get in spirit with Creator next week. So yeah, we'll have just a time of fellowship and prayer. And thanks everybody for coming this week. And
Yeah, thank
hopefully-
you, everyone. Yeah. Everybody, have a good time. Have a good night. See you next week.
To be back from California.
Yeah, I'll be back Sunday night.
Oh, Sunday.
Yeah. It's a quick trip. Yeah, I like these quick ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to take my grandson.
Yep, gotta go, make sure they're safe.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but
I just go to, just to come up.
I know, I got a little thing I read about all the different calendar events that we do that are all associated with the pagan rituals.
Almost
Yeah.
everything we do at the
Yeah,
Christian church. has
Christian
got its
church, has got
origins
all
in
some
that.
connection back there in
Yeah.
pagan Europe. Yeah.
Our paganism's okay.
Yeah, that's why we just gotta transfer that over to the
Yeah.
native people and
Right,
let
give 'em
our
that
ways
right,
be
yeah.
okay too. Yeah. Well, cool. I'm glad you could be with us.